Hey guys, J Man here. All right, and we are back, and we're talking to some fans today. So I've got someone lined up here to talk about John Walker, the U.S. agent. Just a quick housekeeping items. We are going to be live tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. That's going to be our regular Sunday chat, talking about DC, Marvel, all comics, movie related stuff. We will cover Invincible, the finale plus the whole series. We're going to cover that Sunday with my regular panel, and I will be phasing in people into the danger room from the chat. They can come in and share their thoughts on Invincible or anything else. Whatever comes up, it's pretty open. Danger room is where we battle it out and have arguments and yell at each other and scream at each other, but it's all good because once we leave the danger room, we're all friends again, right? So this is the amazing fans. We are going to I'll address the chat every so often when I can, but primarily we're just going to have our one guest who's lined up. And so we're just going to go from there. All right, guys. So let's bring in our guest. His name is Dave Witham, and let's bring Dave in. How's it going, Dave?
Doing great. I'm a little bit embarrassed that we've turned up to the dance wearing the same dress.
Well, we got them. I sent you I sent you a memo, and it's like get the dress code ready. So let just tell everybody a little bit about yourself, where you're from, because that's very interesting where you're from, and also why you kind of got into John Walker.
Yeah, sure. So, Dave Witham. I'm if you can't tell from the accent, I'm from the UK, specifically Manchester in the north of England. I've been a John Walker fan pretty much since the character was created. How I got into John Walker really was entirely an accident. Like anyone else who likes the character, it started with Captain America, logically. But how I got into Captain America was in itself a bit of an accident. Here in the UK, I was born in the 70s, grew up in the 80s, and we had a thriving comic book scene in the UK at the time. Although it was predominantly UK-based comics, war comics, things like 2000 AD, which most people will be familiar with. So whilst I'd always read comics, superhero comics weren't really a big thing. They weren't something I was into as a very young child. But one day I went to what we call a jumble sale, what Americans and Canadians probably refer to as a yard sale. And I picked up this, which was a UK reprint in 1981 of those famous Steranko Captain America images. Issue 110 to 113. And I'm not entirely sure what it was that attracted me. I think it was probably the bright colors. It probably wasn't any more complicated than that. But I read the story. It's a great story. And as far as entries into a character go, you don't get much better than Steranko Captain America. So I from that point onwards, I kind of got into the ongoing Captain America title. I think the first issue I picked up was somewhere in the early 300s, about 307, 310. Captain America comics were quite difficult to get in the UK. We did have superhero comics. We got the Saturday morning shows like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, and we had the Incredible Hulk show. So some superheroes, your really big superheroes, your Spider-Mans, your Hulks, maybe a little bit of X-Men. They were quite popular in the UK, but it was quite difficult to find comic books. Captain America wasn't a popular comic book, a popular character. He really wasn't very well known in the UK at all. But I picked up titles where I could. Like I said, started reading somewhere in the 300s, and then one day picked up a comic book which had this guy in it, a fella called the Super Patriot, who, having been reading Captain America for a little while at that point, really piqued my imagination because he was very, very different from Steve Rogers. He was aggressive, he was strong. He was a little bit obnoxious, and I think there was something about that which appealed to me as a kid. Steve Rogers is great. I love Steve Rogers. I've been reading Captain America my entire life. He's still one of my favorite characters. I'm lucky enough to have collected pretty much anything Captain America related which was ever published over the years. but there was something about this John Walker character that really, really appealed to me as a fan. I liked his faults and the fact he was rough around the edges, and I think as well on a really simple level as a child, which I was at the time. The idea of a guy with superpowers appealed. You know, Captain America was really at this point just this kind of highly trained acrobat, no real superpowers to talk about. A lot of other kids found he was a bit boring because of that, you know, because he couldn't lift a car or smash a wall down. And John Walker could do some of that. So yeah, you know, that's where I started reading John Walker right at the beginning, and I've stuck with it 35 years later. I'm still reading John Walker's stories and loving every bit of them.
That's awesome. I just wanted to point out. I was going to throw this up. Say, you show me yours, I'll show you mine. Yeah, and I just wanted to point out as a bit of comedy that I'm from Canada. I'm Canadian, and you're from the UK, and we're both wearing U.S. agent shirts, which I
there's
find...
a bit of an irony to that. I think it's probably strange. So maybe not so much now with the Marvel Universe stuff, but certainly throughout the 80s and 90s, even though comic books got a little bit more popular as we started getting specialty stores, it was still strange and a little bit rare to find, even amongst comic book fans in the UK, someone who would have someone like Captain America as their favorite character, and certainly someone who would have someone who spent most of his career very much in the C lists as their character, as is the case with John Walker.
Yeah, and I think like for me, I started, so I didn't have this like as a kid, but I did have some of the ones you were talking about. When I was reading it, it was like Steve was the captain, and and actually Steve Rogers wears this. This is what he was wearing, and I collected He-Man as a kid and still now. And I had some old beat up He-Man figure, and I actually painted him in this costume. It's just so awful, and I've lost that. And I tried to make my own U.S. agent figure now, and I remember as a kid thinking, "Oh, this is Captain America," and then I was so confused. You know, when you start to go back in your, like, as you grow up and you go back to these books and you're going through them, you're like, "Wait, no, that's U.S. agent. Why did I think that was Captain America?" And then I just started rereading. Look, when Falcon and Winter Soldier came out, that's where the boom happened. Now John Walker's a household name. Everyone's talking about him. So I had to go back. I'm like, let me go through these issues again. I didn't even realize I had the first appearance of all these characters, Flag Smasher and Lamar and all that. And I'm looking at these. I'm like, oh yeah, I used to love these. So then I started going through them again. And I'm like, oh my God, Steve Rogers wore this first. And I was like, that's where the confusion was, right? And because like John Walker was literally Captain America. And I've got an image here that I'll throw up. And I've shown this before as well, where this is Battlestar. In this picture, it's Bucky, and that's actually John Walker as Captain America. And you can see that he looks a little bit, just like his mouth, he's grinning a little bit. It feels like a little bit more, I don't want to say sinister, but like a little bit like you could tell it's not Steve.
There is, did you ever read West Coast Avengers?
Oh my God, West Coast Avengers. Okay, so I'm rereading all my West Coast Avengers, and I'm just now here where John Walker has now come in and said, I'm taking over here. And there's like, and then him and Hawkeye are just butting heads, man.
Well, in his first full, you know, going back to how Walker looks different to Steve Rogers as Captain America. If you remember his first full appearance in the John Byrne run of West Coast Avengers, it starts, I think it was issue 45. It starts with a full page headshot of him. And I can't remember the exact wording of it, but Byrne is commenting that, you know, the jaw is perhaps too big and the eyes perhaps a little bit too blue. And it's almost like the way I kind of described it is if you were building a Patriot in a factory via some kind of specification, you'd probably get someone like John Walker, you know, but, you know, the jaw is too wide,
yeah.
You know, the eyes too blue, the hair too blonde. You know, he kind of looks like he was built in a factory, like you'd build a car or a tank.
I posted a video earlier today talking about the Flash Gordon cereal, and I'll parallel this in a second. And I was just thinking Buster Crabbe in this time, like, would have been like a perfect U.S. agent. Like, he's like exactly, he's got the hair and everything. You're like, oh my god, this would be an interesting John Walker if he was still alive or whatever. But yeah, I mean, the West Coast Avengers, I love West Coast, and that was the Vision Quest stuff. So Vision was the White Vision. This is all tying in. Like the MCU, the way they're doing this is really cool because this is sort of like our time. Like, and people are coming to me saying, "Oh, Vision, what's going on with Vision?" I was like, "Oh, he was white, because he was dismantled, and he came back, and he was kind of just pale." And this whole John Walker stuff. Now, I know a lot of people have been, really talking about John Walker. We'll get to that stuff in a second, but you also created a Facebook group, and well, until just recently, you were the only John Walker Facebook group. And I've got the link, guys, in the description of the video. Once this live stream ends, it'll automatically post to YouTube, so you guys can check out the link below and join that. And it's John Walker Talk, all John Walker Talk, and it's really really cool. So, what made you decide to go forward and do a Facebook group? Because that's a little bit of a step further than just I collect comics, right?
Yeah, well, do you know what? It started out, I'll be perfectly honest, it started out as a bit of a personal vanity project. I had this character that I really loved, and no one was really interested in him. So I just kind of wanted to get the word out. Now, it originally started, the name of the page originally was US Agent Cosplay and Comics, because at the time I was doing a lot of cosplaying with the shield and whatnot.
That's
behind
awesome.
me, making my own costumes and things like that. Now, it ran under that name for maybe a year or two, and then I stopped doing the cosplay, mainly because the shows were kind of getting very similar. And a big difference you find with shows over here as compared to the States is that comic book conventions are actually more about pop culture rather than specifically comic books. So TV and movies and even literature, things like cartoons as well, they tend to get more attention than comic books. So you won't find many comic books at a British comic book convention. You won't find much comic book talent, artists or creators. Even a British talent, you won't find much of it there. It's mainly 100 different stalls selling Funko Pops and people dressed up as movie characters. So I stopped going to the comic book conventions and changed the name of the page to US Agent, part cop, part soldier, all hero, which I thought was a more apt way, or certainly the way I like to describe the character. He's this guy who predominantly works for the government. He's kind of a cop, he's kind of a soldier, but he's definitely a hero. And the initial point of the page, I suppose, was to try and chronicle all of his comic book appearances, which we actually managed to do within the first 2 or 3 years. He's only got around 500 comic book appearances in total in 35 years, which isn't that many. He is mainly a C or B list character. So we kind of then got into more kind of general John Walker, US Agent, Captain America type conversation. I mean, we had long periods where there wasn't a lot to talk about because he wasn't appearing in the comic books, and obviously we didn't have a show. But I would troll the internet literally every day trying to find even the most obscure article or fan art or other people's cosplays or merchandise, whatever I could get, because I really, I love this guy to bits, and I'm like everyone else. I think I want people to kind of like the things I like. I want them to be part of the gang. So really, that was the whole point of the page, just to get it out there for me as much as other people. And as it is, we've been running now for about 7 years. And we've got, we're not a huge page. I think we're somewhere near around 450 members, but we're a real hardcore of proper John Walker fans. They love the guy for the same reasons I do. It's a really friendly environment. It doesn't get political in the way you think a John Walker page might do. We don't ban politics. We do talk about politics, but all the guys and girls who are on the page are really cool people, and things have always remained civil. I think in 7 or 8 years I've had to boot one person out, and that's as bad as it's ever got. But yeah, we carry on, and I think I'll be carrying on for the foreseeable future. We've got more to talk about now than we've ever had before, which is terrific.
Yeah, well, the MCU has a way of bringing people on board, and I'm sure now if you go and try to look up these issues, It's going to be they're way high in price. When I went back about 20 years ago to try to recollect the Mark Grunwald like complete run of Cap, I was getting them for $1 or $2 a piece. I showed you earlier before we started. First appearance of Battlestar Lamar Hoskins. First appearance of John Walker. I don't know who else was in that book, but that was like $2. It was $2.99, $3 Canadian, which is like 1 cent American or something like that. But like, and I think that's free. That's like maybe like $1.50 or something for you or whatever. So that's like nothing. And now I don't even know what that book would be going for because of the hype that this whole thing has brought about. I want to say hey to Skeptic Stream, how's it going, dude? You just woke up and you're having some coffee. That's awesome. That is awesome. He does. Dave, do you have all 500 John Walker appearances in that?
I've got every single comic that John Walker appeared in, even if he's just standing in the background somewhere. So I mean, all the regular ones are kind of in the short boxes here. So I've got a box with West Coast Avengers and Force Works and Omega Flight, New Invaders, Captain America, obviously, and I've got another box which just has the kind of the odds and sods in, the guest appearances here and there. But yeah, over the years I've collected every single one of them.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, I mean, I haven't. I'm trying to just finish the Mark Grunwald run. Ish, like I'm starting at 300. I don't know when he took over 305 or 6 or something.
I think it was 307.
307. Okay.
And I mean, really, I'm so glad you do it because it is a brilliant run. Even
it's brilliant.
Even Grunwald's bad stuff is great. Stuff like Cap Wolf and Fighting.
I haven't got there yet.
These stories got a real load of bad press, but they're really good stories. And I mean, the guy wrote the book for 10 years, which is a run which is it's never going to be beaten. Not in the climate of modern comics where series are lasting 10, 20 issues. A guy writing a book consistently for 10 years might never happen again at Marvel. And that particular run, I don't think any writer did more for the character or explore the issues of exactly what it means to be Captain America more than Mark Grunwald is. Mark Grunwald did. Now, obviously, there's been great writers since, for likes of Mark Waid, Ed Brubaker, but to a degree, they're covering the ground which was originally covered by Grunwald. We continue to explore this issue of what does it mean to be Captain America? What does Captain America represent? What makes Captain America? Is it the serum or is it the man? Is it the costume? Is it the shield? Mark Grunwald's the guy who really did this first and did it in more detail than anyone before had and anyone who's worked on the title since has. So he's still my favorite Captain America writer, not just because he created my favorite Captain America character, but because he did so many great stories. I mean, some of the stories, The Captain, where Walker obviously makes his big break, is a terrific story. It doesn't matter what title you're talking about. That is a top echelon story. But other things like Streets of Poison, great story. Bloodstone Home, great story. And Grunwald created so many great characters, the Serpent Society and Crossbones and obviously US Agent, Diamondback, D-Man, some people might not even know who these guys are, but if you're a Captain America fan, you love these characters.
Where is D-Man? I've got him on. He's on the cover of a few of these. And you're like, to me, I remember reading him as a kid. I'm thinking, he looks kind of like, he's like Wolverine with Daredevil's old costume.
Yeah.
That's sort of the, and he's actually a cool character. Going back and rereading these, so I love West Coast Avengers. That's a childhood favorite as well. I had the first ever White Vision appearance. Like I had all of these as a kid. Reading it, I love West Coast Avengers big time, and going back through these caps now, reading this Mark Grunwald stuff is killer. Like, had I not, this is a Peter David arm that I've got. I would have done.
I love Peter David's work. His X Factor run is one of my favorites.
It's great. Yeah, so I would.
I've got all of that over here somewhere.
Is all.
Yeah.
And I was thinking, I'm like reading this. I'm like, crap. I should have done this. I would have done Mark Grunwald, Peter David. That would have been like, And it's like it's kind of too. I might get US Agent or a couple of guys just to like have some representation in there. Sean, hey, how's it going, Sean? So Sean and I, when you're talking about going to the conventions, there you in Canada, you got to pick your convention. Like for example, we have some big ones, and it's exactly what you said. It's basically toy. It's just basically toy shows with a few comics mixed in here and there. You might find a dealer or two, but there is a show. It hasn't been open now for over a year because of we know why. But that show we used to go to, it was like $7 Canadian. It was pure only comic books, nothing else, or magazines or things like. So it's like I would hit up like we'd get like, oh, Savage Sword of Conan, got to pick those up, got to, and they'd have 20,000 AD, 2,000 AD as well, and it's like, but they would have like everything is only comics, and there was a guy, it's like he literally has like 3 walls, and it's one vendor, and it's like you just go up to him and you're like, yeah, I need Captain America X to X, X to Y, and he's like, yeah, here you go, and like. Just only comics. You just take a backpack. You don't need to bring all these bags and carry these toys. And I really like those because I'm tired. Look, and everybody knows me. Look, I'm collecting all this crap, right? And I've got Funko Pops. And I pre-ordered the US Agent Funko Pop, of course.
So did I,
and
yeah.
All right. Look, we
I
pre-ordered.
can't stand the things, but I wasn't going to miss out on that.
No,
Honestly, I think Funkos are completely soulless bits of plastic. I can't stand them, but I can't turn up a bit of John Walker US Agent memorabilia. In fact, I think...
Did you? Oh, I don't have. I missed out on that one's really hard to get.
Is it?
Yeah, at least in Canada, I missed out on that completely. It looked like just like a repaint of Captain America, pretty much, right? And I don't know. It was like I don't know if it was like just like exclusive in some area here, because sometimes you get those where they're exclusive to something. But I cannot find it. It's on eBay for like a lot. It's going to go up now because of the show.
It was some kind of exclusive, but I don't know exclusive to what, and it doesn't actually say on the box. But yeah, it is some kind of exclusive.
US Agent, yes. Oh, okay. So I wanted to talk about this. Yeah. So Sean's my buddy. So Sean and I go to all these conventions and stuff, and Sean's on my regular panel for the Danger Room live streams. But one of the things I had I had heard you on the Captain America Comic Book Fans podcast. That's where I learned about the Facebook group, and then I joined it, and then we talked privately after that. But one thing I liked, one of your posts, there was a certain website. I'm not going to mention the website because I think it's kind of trash, but they did the 10 reasons that John Walker was bad or something stupid like that, right? It's clickbait. And then I saw your post, and I swear to God, I was crying my eyes out because you're like, you went through each 10, you're like, wrong, out of context, just that's a lie, false. It was so, I swear to God, if we could find that post, I'd put it up. It was, I don't want to direct people to the website that it came from, because I don't like that website is wonky to me. But you dismantled, because people are like, well, John Walker's, a former wrestler, and it's like, okay, well, so is Spider-Man, so is The Rock. Like, what are you talking about? Like,
well, he was never actually a wrestler.
Yeah,
he tried to be a wrestler. He never made it. He never made it.
Yeah, so you're just like, you're like, this is out of context or false. It's like,
well,
so, I mean,
and I dare say I speak for a lot of fans here. We've all got our favourites, and I think we all have a sense of ownership of our favourite heroes. And when someone disses that hero online, as it usually is, you're like, oh we're going to fight now, are we? Yeah. And it's like furiously typing away. And I mean, I've done a little bit of work in the media on websites. Obviously, I mean, everyone's effectively in the media now because we're all doing stuff online. And I just think, these big pop culture pages, and we're talking about one of the biggest, the one which shall not be named.
Right.
They should just, they should do a little bit better with the research. And you wonder, do these guys, have you ever read the comics? They're talking about them. Have you ever read them? I mean, I'd say they pick it up on Wikipedia, but as I wrote most of the Wikipedia page, they should be able to do better from that.
Yeah. I mean, like, you literally wrote the page, right? It's like that's the thing. It's like, but they don't read the comics, right? Like,
no.
And the thing is, I don't remember everything. I'm bad with names. I'm bad with issue numbers, like really bad. And I've got tons of comics. Like, I had 22 long boxes before I started selling and giving some away because it was just I couldn't fit anymore. And I kept the ones I like, West Coast, Captain America, that X-Men stuff. But like, I don't know everything either. But I'm not going to go write an article and then get all these factual things wrong. And the other thing, like, I mean, I saw I don't know if it was the same site, but another one. This is off topic, but they're talking about Mortal Kombat, and they said, oh, they left Chun-Li out of Mortal Kombat, and this is just such a disgrace, like, anti-Asian or something. I'm thinking Chun-Li's in Street Fighter, not Mortal Kombat. This isn't like where you got your facts a little bit skewed. This is like flat out, you're an idiot. It's like, how come Falcon and Winter Soldier doesn't have Superman in it? Isn't he a patriot? Why isn't Superman in this? It's like, he's from DC. It's like, oh, and that's the problem, because people that don't know are going to read that, and they're going to be like, yeah, that's right. John Walker sucks. This is stupid. He's a villain, and he's crazy. And we're going to get to Falcon and Winter Soldier, because I want to hear your takes on that for sure. And you have a Falcon and Winter Soldier page as well on Facebook, correct?
I do, yeah. It's not my page. I can't take credit for setting it up. I'm one of the moderators on that
You're
page.
One of the mods. Okay.
I was a member of the page for a while, and a frequent commentator on there. Again, I mean, I like Bucky and I love Sam Wilson, but obviously John Walker is the guy for me. So that's the main reason why I was there. And I'm kind of the resident John Walker expert, if you will. And it's a huge page. We're up to something like 30,000 members now, and it's almost like a second job. Doing the administration duties on it, approving the posts, and refereeing all the squabbles, which we find ourselves in quite often, is really time consuming. But and I do have the time for it, and the people who run it, and hopefully they're watching this. So hi, they are really lovely people, and it really is a labour of love for them. They love these characters as much as I do. They're great people, and I wish they got appreciated perhaps by some of the members of the page more than they do, because we put a lot of hard work into it. It's a lot harder than running the US agent page with like 500 members. That's the US agent page is a hobby. The Falcon and Winter Soldier page is almost like a job, it's a fun job.
Yeah, it's tough running these pages. I had a couple, and then I kind of just took them down. Or I had one for like the Phantom, and I was doing the Spider-Man strip as well for the newspaper strip. I'd actually bought the licensing rights to post the Spider-Man newspaper strip that was coming out daily, and then they just keep republishing it. So I actually got the licensing rights, which didn't cost that much at all. And it's just hard to monitor. Like for me, I couldn't do YouTube and do that, and it's just like, your phone just blows up. It's just like bing, 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 bing. You're like, I can't answer all of this stuff. So, that's why it's like, you almost have to kind of pick, if this is going to be a hobby, that's great. Let it be a hobby and it'll be for fun. And then, yeah, the moderating like thousands of people, like that's crazy.
I mean, I spent a little bit of time a couple of years back working for a pop culture page and website doing comic book reviews, which, was a lot of fun and sounded like a lot of fun when I was offered the opportunity, but it really was like a job, and it was. And you think writing a 500 word review would be really easy, and it's really, really not. You've got an editor, you've got to make sure your spelling is correct, you've got to make sure your punctuation is spot on, you've got to get a snappy headline in it, which is the hardest part about writing any article. It's not the article. The article's easy. All you're doing is talking about what you're reading. Trying to get a catchy headline is the hardest thing in the world. And I loved the end result. I loved seeing the articles. I was proud of the work I did. But doing it was just so time consuming. I mean, I would literally sit at my desk sometimes for 2 hours thinking, how am I going to start this? And I've got a week to write the article, and I'm spending hours just thinking, I don't even know where to start. And I always kind of got there in the end. But it was starting to feel like a bit of a job. And it was a job we didn't get paid for, of course.
Right.
And, struggling along with managing the social media pages, and obviously being a working person in a full-time job and having a social life, it was something I had to leave by the wayside, which part of me is disappointed, but I wouldn't have been able to give it my full attention. So it was the right thing to do.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and it's like, and if you feel that, it's like, you get nerds. Yes, we're nerds. Yes. Okay, let's take a look at Iron Man 90s cartoon. It was based on ForceWorks comics, which US Agent was a member. Oh, they replaced them, eh? I think I have that cartoon. Did that cartoon come out?
So what we're talking about is this. So the Marvel Action Hour had
Yes.
the Iron Man cartoon, and it was the roster was loosely based upon the Force Work book, which I have down here somewhere. So Force Works.
Yeah, Force Works. Yep.
But they decided to get rid of US Agent because apparently a guy who hits people with a shield is too violent, but a fellow who shoots people with arrows isn't. And they did create an action figure for it, which was short packed in boxes. I think there was one for every 16 action figures or something like that. But he never appeared in the show. Although he did appear, there was a Marvel Action Hour comic which ran for about 8 issues, published at the time of the show, and he does appear in that. But no, US Agent never appeared in the show. Although I did like the show. I mean, even now it's dated clearly, but it's still quite a fun show to watch.
I think I have that one. Yeah, and Sean, Sean knows my collection better than I know my collection. So Sean will tell me if I have it. I believe it's down here and it's under a pile of stuff, so I'm not going to pull it out. But I think that's the one we're talking about. Is that we do? I remember that. David Hasselhoff, I remember that as well. When I was 12, bought an Enterprise model. My dad told me it'd be nice to get it. Oh my God, I would have had a heart attack. Don't mix Star Wars and Star Trek. Yes. Okay. So is that the one that we were just? I know the one you're talking about. I remember the Toy Biz figure. Do you remember? Yes, that's it. Yep. It was, and I remember too because you could still see the scales.
Yeah. If you look really closely, you can still see Captain America's original emblem, and obviously the US Agent star is slightly offset, but it's got a pretty cool looking shield. And it was the only US Agent figure we had for a long time. So I still have it. It's quite cool.
That's a cool one to keep in the packaging because I always like the artwork of those. Like I like the card backs of those a lot.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And that art is really good.
And it has the realistic kind of shield launching. I don't think we're allowed to sell things like this anymore, are we? Because they might kill children or something like that.
I don't know. Well, I had the Captain America of that, and I still had it. I sold it at a toy show not too long ago for nothing because it was just really beat up. And I didn't like the shield launching thing. I don't know why. I would always just have him wear the shield, and I remember the thing snapped off, so I actually had to use like a rubber band, and I kind of like got it back on his arm or whatever. Let's see what else. Vintage Star Wars. Yeah, I mean, vintage Star Wars is killer. That's sort of where. That was the rare Star Wars. Which one was that? Oh, the battle. Yeah. That was cool. Sean and I are big Star Wars guys. That's awesome. Yep. All right. What else we got? The Iron Man cartoon toy line. Yeah. So that was the one that you just held up before the last one.
Yeah.
I've never even seen that. I never even seen that before.
That's the Force Works costume, and it was later used. It was repurposed for a Professor X action figure. His astral plane kind of armor, which you might like his battles with the Shadow King if you remember them from the comics and the cartoons. So yeah, they did a repaint on it, but I think it was generally available. It was just available in limited quantities because it was what they called short packed.
Short packed, yeah, we know. Yeah, it's like one per case.
So you'd only have, say, one per crate of 16. So finding them, I mean, I didn't pay too much for this, and I got it in the UK. It's quite difficult a lot of the time getting merchandise that originates in America over here. But no, I didn't, and I think they're still readily available. You still, there's not loads of them, but you will find them on eBay and other sites online.
Yeah, I was definitely aware of the other one. I'd never seen that one, that one before. The majority only, yeah, they don't read comics. Yeah, the superheroes. Yeah, right. Now that John Walker has been played by Wyatt Russell, who is the damn best. Now it's going to be all over the place. Tish, how's it going? Thank you for joining us in the chat.
Trish is one of the administrators on the Falcon and Winter Soldier page. Hello, Trish.
That page must be like super skyrocketing now because it's like this show is like just like all like as like you like everyone is now talking about it. Like it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, at the moment we're probably having to process hundreds of membership requests a day and dozens and dozens of posts and referee thousands of comments. It's it's fun, and we like to have a good moan about it behind the scenes on our little private chats. But they, for the most part, they're a great group, and we try our best to make it a friendly, positive, no negativity type place. The internet's negative enough. We don't really want any of that. So we try to filter out the negative stuff that's kind of trying to pick an argument, maybe get a bit too political, and try just to make it a friendly place where, regardless of which of the characters you like, whether it's Bucky, Sam, John, or any of the others, that you can just be amongst people who love the characters like you do and have a good chat about it.
Yeah, I don't like being negative because I don't want people to be discouraged in the fandom. That's sort of my take. Like, if somebody like, there's certain movies that I don't really love, and everyone who knows me knows which ones they are. I don't like some of the darker DC takes, right? For example, but anyways, it doesn't matter. But I never get upset with people, because if they come up to me and say, "Oh, I love this," I'm like, "Oh, that's great." I want you to be happy that you saw something that you liked and maybe bring you in, because if you say, like, let's say someone says, "I hate the sequel or I love the Star Wars sequel trilogy," which I don't really care about that much. I don't tell them, "Oh, you're an idiot," because I want them to be Star Wars fans and trying to get them in. You know what I mean? That's sort of where I come from. Now, if you're talking to me privately and it's you and me and the cameras are off and the live stream's over, I'll tell you what I really think. But out there, I want like people to come together, so I don't want it to be like too negative. Like, you can give points, but I don't want it to just be, "This is trash, this sucks." Even though I might think that.
The internet's far too negative a place anyway. The real world can be a difficult world to live in. And these should be, a little oasis for people to escape from the drudgery of real life. Comic book fans in particular, and I suppose movie fans too, there is this reputation for toxicity. So it's nice that there's little corners of the internet, and there's not many of them. Rick's Captain America page, which I'm a member of as well, is another one where we insist on no negativity. The US agent is like that. US agent page is like that as well. The Falcon and the Winter Soldier page. We don't want people who are just arguing and being miserable and calling people names and calling people dumbasses and all of that.
Right.
We want people to concentrate on what they like rather than what they don't like. And there's room for constructive criticism. If you didn't like something, then we don't stop you from saying that you don't like it. We just want you to make that argument in a constructive way. Tell us why you didn't like it. Don't just come on and kind of tear a strip and say that the entire world is full of idiots or something like that.
Well, I think the thing is that, like, I mean, you know who Ricky Gervais is, right? And he did this thing on guitar lessons. I don't know if you ever saw. He did a stand-up thing where he's talking about guitar lessons, where he's walking. He's like, somebody's offering guitar lessons, and he's like, "I don't effing want guitar lessons." Like, okay, if you don't want it, move on. So on my channel, I'll say whatever I want, and if I don't like something, I'll tell you I don't like it. But I'm not going to go to someone else's page. Like, I would never go to the US agent page just to join it and say, "Oh, Wyatt Russell's garbage," or this show sucks. Like, why would I bother? I'm only going to join the web pages or the Facebook groups or whatever for the things that I like, and I want to talk about why I like these things, because there's no point in me talking about why I don't like them. So that's sort of the difference that I'm seeing in my mind. Like, if you want to talk to me about things you don't like, that's cool. Like, when I do my Danger Room stuff, it's all on the table. We have arguments live stream all the time, and people say I'm a dumbass and whatever. I'm okay with it. It doesn't bother me because I just don't care. But I'm not going to go to someone else's platform and start, doing negative stuff. Like people going to Wyatt Russell's Twitter and saying you're an evil person. It's like, he's playing a character. Like,
yeah, but even now, even with the show, being a fan of John Walker is a lonely hill to fight on. I'll admit that I do kind of rise to the bait when someone's criticizing the character or perhaps doesn't quite understand the character. I will make my argument, but it'll be me saying, well, this is how I feel about it, rather than me saying, well, you're an idiot. Right. There's a constructive way to make your arguments, and some people you're never going to win. I've had conversations with people, and you can make a very intelligent, detailed, lengthy argument about why perhaps they don't understand, or perhaps things they might not have seen, they might not have read the comics, things in the character's history they might not be aware of, and then they'll just reply to that with, "Yeah, well, he's still a dumbass and I still hate him."
Right. And yeah, so Steven is another one of my buddies from the Danger Room. And yeah, I mean, I heard Wyatt Russell got death threats and stuff too. I'm like, are these people crazy? Like, oh my god, they're insane. Clobbering Times, how's it going, dude? I saw you earlier on Geeks and Gamers chat. I was on there for like 1 minute because I had to come set this up. What else is going on, you guys? Well, no, but Dave did the information on the wiki page, so I would say it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, when I started working on that page, it was pretty much a stub. It went up to the West Coast Avengers Day, so didn't really go much further. So I elaborated on what was already there. And then wrote pretty much the rest of it. Increased the sections on things like his powers and abilities and his costumes and his equipment. And I referenced it myself. So every reference in there will refer to the comic book in which that event or that character appeared. So I put up a load of effort into that and tried to make it as detailed as I can. So we covered all of John Walker's major kind of stories and events on the Wikipedia page. But I also tried to make sure as many of these kind of more minor appearances and occurrences were in there too. So, for a guy who's not actually been in that much comics, I've put as much work as I could into that. Because it tends to be the place that people default when you don't understand something or you don't really know something. People go to Wikipedia. And, John Walker, US agent, is a character that in general people don't know a great deal about. Some people are going to be seeing him for the first time, thanks to the show. And they're going to be curious about, who is this guy? What's his comic book history? So I wanted there to be a place where people could go. And it's the place where most people are going to go, Wikipedia. And, they can have a real read about the character and get a real understanding of, who he is and where he's come from and what kind of things he's got up to in his career.
Yeah, I go to Wikipedia if I need to. When we were kids, in DC there was the Who's Who. You buy those issues and it like explain what the characters were. I got a lot of information from the Marvel TSR advanced role playing game. I don't know if you're aware of that game.
I know I've never played it, but I am aware of it. Yeah.
Okay, I've got 2 of them from childhood because I bought my best friend's mom threw out my judge's book and then she thought it was garbage or something. And then she had to buy me another one. So I actually have 2 of those. We played it all the time. And I read all the backstories. So it's like, I know the Monica Rambeau Captain Marvel. I liked Wolverine in the brown costume. It seemed to have been like all of the weird versions. I guess when that came out, all of which is now not the people, like they don't think of Monica Rambeau as Captain Marvel anymore. It's like, but that was sort of the one I knew. And like, you'd get your information from that because it would tell you the backstory and all their powers and stuff. So that's sort of that was my Wikipedia before internet. Yes, I do have the cartoon. Yeah, I just checked. I do have it. Is there a superhero with an underrated rogues gallery? Gosh, maybe Superman if we're talking about that.
Daredevil.
Sorry?
Daredevil, he's got a pretty underrated rogues gallery.
Yeah, Daredevil's right up there.
The likes of Bullseye, he's a pretty big character, but I've got a soft spot for the likes of the Jester or Mr. Thea. These are pretty good characters who perhaps haven't had the attention they deserve.
What about Gladiator? They looked like they were going to have. He was kind of was. It looked like they were going to kind of have him in the TV series.
Did you notice the Gladiator armor in the background?
Yeah, it had the. And I love Stiltman. Okay,
Stiltman.
Okay, this is so super off topic. I absolutely love Stiltman. I have Stiltman's first appearance graded right up there. And Stiltman's legs were in the back, and I thought, oh my god, if Stiltman appears, I will die on the. I love Stiltman. So U.S. Agent definitely he's going to have to be in Captain America 4. I would assume.
I mean, I don't know. It's really difficult to. I mean, I have some ideas as to obviously how they're going to use the character going forward, and you'd presume that it would play into kind of where the character went in the comic books. But exactly how they're going to do that, I don't know. I mean, it stands to reason we'll probably have a Thunderbolts movie at some point. Yep. I mean, US Agent as a Captain America character hasn't actually had that many stories. He didn't appear in a great many issues after his one big story, which was his time as Captain America. There was a period where, back in the 1980s, where Captain America had a backup story in it, you don't see backup stories very often nowadays. And there was a whole series of stories explaining his brainwashing at the hands of the government, and when he realized he was being manipulated, and his regret and his guilt over some of the terrible things that he did as Captain America. And they were really, really good stories. But I get the impression that the MCU is kind of done with that. I don't know if they're going to explore his PTSD or his regrets the way they did in the comics. I think we're going to move on from his time as Captain America and go thoroughly into his time as US agent. But yeah, Thunderbolts, that seems to be a given. Perhaps Dark Avengers, but I think I'm tempted to go Thunderbolts before Dark Avengers. I don't think we're ever going to see a Force Works movie.
No, I don't. I don't think. But never say never, right? I mean, I never thought Guardians of the Galaxy would ever be anything like. I was just like, Guardians, yeah, they're okay, I guess. I never gave them much of a. And I'm talking about the original Guardians, not this iteration, which I didn't really read that much of. But we got it. So I don't know. I never thought I'd see U.S. Agent ever. So I mean, this is crazy. Like Lamar too. I was real. We'll get to that. We're gonna get to that. Let me go through a couple of these, and we're gonna get back. I want to talk about the first kind of big arc, and really the only arc in Captain America with John Walker, because I'm reading it now. I'm almost done reading. I was trying to finish it for this week. I just couldn't finish it. We were super busy at my day job, so I couldn't take my extended lunch breaks. Is there another superhero named Dave? I'm not sure. No, Dave's like a nice guy. He's not going to do anything to you. Don't worry. Everything's good. Sean, you think U.S. Agent was portrayed well? We are going to talk about that, Sean. We're going to get back to that. Want him to suspicion. Yeah, we're gonna definitely address it. So that's John. That's the U.S. Agent shield. Is that to scale? Dave?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, let me grab it for you.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, that's wicked. Now, did you convert? Like, what is that? Is that a cap shield that you converted, or?
No. This was a custom shield. I can't remember where I bought it from. It was a guy who. It's a bit dusty. It was a guy who basically had a metalworking shop, and so ran a kind of side business making Captain America style shields to whatever specification you wanted. So cool. I could have had this one, for example. I could have had it with the star in the middle, but decided not to go with that because for the most part, US Agent Shield didn't have a star. There's one or two occasions when it did, but you're talking about 9-10 appearances where he had a star. So I wanted the traditional look, and this was what I was using in my most of my cosplay when I was doing that. I started off on a repainted plastic Captain America shield, but it wasn't really up to scratch. So I decided to invest in the real thing. It's made out of spun aluminium, so it's quite sturdy, quite impressive, and it's a really nice. Now it's just a piece of memorabilia which I just like to have lying around. It makes me smile when I see it.
That is awesome. I made a shield in woodshop class when I was in high school, but they let us use metal in woodshop class. And they had an anvil. I made like the more triangular shield that Captain America had. Yeah, I made that kind of style. I couldn't forge or whatever, like pound out the metal, like the circular one. So I did the triangular one. I didn't get a chance to paint it. I was going to paint the I guess it'd be the Lamar's kind of shield. Which he sadly never got to see in the show. That was that one. Hey, Cosmos John, how's it going? We're going to talk about Invincible tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. So come join us there. We're going to break that down big time. Doesn't want to watch MCU until Asbestos Man. Okay, is that a real character? I don't need.
Yeah. He was a Golden Age character. He fought the original Human Torch, and I'll give you one reason. I'll give you one guess how he died. Asbestos poisoning. Back in the 1930s, 1940s, asbestos was a wonder material, and it was only really in the 1970s and 80s that we realised it was killing people. So right. He's a little bit passé nowadays, asbestos.
I have some of the Human Torch and Submariner Golden Age, like Jim Hammond Human Torch, like those compendiums or those masterworks, kind of those hardcover volumes. That isn't a dish. You want the World War II shield that is. Oh, you mean like the triangular one, right? By Captain America, the one that isn't a circle. Yeah. So Lamar had that had a variation kind of that shield as well. Yeah, come by, John. Okay, so let's get into. So I mean, Steve Rogers gives it up. There's a whole story behind that. I don't want to like go into the entire detail. You guys should all read it. If you can't pick up the original issues, there is a volume that you can get on Comixology, and it really, it's that entire thing. The cover is U.S. Agent and Captain America facing off. I don't know what issue number that is. I mean, I don't know what number that is, but that's the cover, and it collects this entire thing. So if you can't find the original issues, you can buy this and you can read it. And I suggest you guys read it because I've been like just dying over it, reading it all over again. And I don't know. I like literally everything is so connected perfectly in this story, like with the right and left wingers, with those with the watchdogs, which with the even the mutants. What are the resistance? No, yeah, the resistance.
That's right. Yeah,
yeah. Those guys are killer. The stuff with John Walker and Lamar Hoskins, Battlestar, the stuff with them doing their little missions is also side to side with basically it's Nomad, D-Man, and Captain America and Falcon. They're doing like missions, so you're getting two stories going to, they're gonna meet up or whatever, but like they're going simultaneously back to back, and it's so damn good. So
even the way it was published, if I mean, you might not have noticed, because I certainly didn't notice first off, you tend to have a John Walker Lamar issue, and then you'll have a Steve Rogers Sam Wilson issue, and the two don't cross. They're obviously moving closer and closer to an intersection, but for the most part, you have an issue covering one side of a story and an issue covering the other, and exploring the problem from the two different perspectives. You've got John Walker, it's finally sinking in what it means to be Captain America, and then you've who's dealing with this crisis of not being a Captain America anymore and deciding who he is going to be and whether he can still be a hero. And eventually they intersect at the conclusion of the story. The way I often describe the story is it's basically about the two wings of the bird, but ultimately they're attached to the same bird. You know, they can't work independently of each other, and that's kind of where we end up at the end, where you have them really on two different sides of the equation, not so much enemies, but certainly not friends. And we end up, at the end with the two kind of reconciling with each other, and the realization is that really they're part of the same bird. These two wings, the left wing and the right wing.
Yeah, and the thing is that like. This story, it's so engaging because and you're right. I actually did not notice that, because even though I have almost all of those issues in physical form, I'm reading them on my iPad because I can read them at work. Look, we're nerds. I'm not taking comic books to my day job, right? Like that's not happening. So I need to have. I'm one of these guys that buys a digital one so he can read it, and then I can keep my books safe in my little home, but. So I didn't even pick up on that, but that's right, because I'm powering threes. Like, I mean, I've never seen such a fast-paced, interesting story go. Like, you're reading one issue, like, well, that was the end of that issue. Like, got to read the next one, and I'm just plowing through these. And I thought I'd finish the whole thing off. I just read with his parents and what he does to those to the watchdogs, which was like
that is a hell of an issue. I mean, that's a really, really powerful issue, and I defy anyone not to have sympathy for John Walker in that issue. It's awful, what happens to him, but it's so brutal as well. I mean, that fight scene is probably one of the most brutal fight scenes you'll see in any comic book ever. And again, I don't want to ruin it for anyone who's not seen it. It's quite different from the show if you've watched the show. But if you want to know what John Walker's Lamar moment is in the comic books, you need to read that issue. I think it was 345. Is that right?
I don't know what number it is. No, it was. I think it was before the. This is 343, and then I got a couple of gaps in my collection, so I don't have the physical issues on hand right now. It's definitely after three. It's definitely after 343. This is 340. Yeah, so it's 340. It's definitely after that. So it's definitely past this, right?
Yeah.
It's very close to this. So it's like one, and this is 343. So it's like just a few after that. But yeah, now I saw I read the comics as like a little kid, but look, when you're reading comics as a kid, and I'm talking a little kid, like, you know, you're kind of looking at the pictures and you're figuring out what's happening. You're reading a little bit of like what's going on. I didn't sit there and like analyze. I just thought, oh, this is cool. I'll get the next one. Going reading it through it now, you're like, the writing is so awesome. And actually, I mean, you know, to say the comics are doing it better than the show, I mean, is that a no-brainer? Like the comics are going to be better because it's longer. You get to see John Walker. Like I feel that John Walker got more of. You learn about the character way more because you had him do all these missions, and you see that he's a good guy. He's trying to do good, and he loses it at that point. And I would think anyone would lose their shit at this point if what happened to him happens to you. And there is sympathy. Like I was just like, oh man, this sucks. But you know, in the show, they didn't flip it. But I don't know. Did you have as much sympathy for him in the show as you did in the comics, or what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, with regards to the show, people need to realize it's not a binary choice. You know, I think sometimes people look at a character like John Walker and they look at it in a very black and white way. You know, we've got white hats and we've got black hats, like, you know, your traditional Westerns. There's shades of grey, and John Walker, whether it's for show or whether it's for comic books, has always occupied those shades of grey. So it is possible not to love him or hate him, or, you know, not to sympathise with him or hate him. My feelings on it were that, I mean, what he ultimately does, I don't sympathise with him killing the Flag Smasher, but I understand why he did it. And that's that shade of grey. You know, you don't have to say it was a good thing, it was a bad thing. It can be a bad thing, but for an understandable reason. You can do a bad thing for a good reason. You can do a good thing for a bad reason. There is nuance to the character, and I think sometimes that nuance was missed by some viewers. You know, the ones who were going online saying, "Oh God, you know, he's awful. He's ruined Captain America for me. I'm not going to watch the show because it's so awful. You know, they've destroyed Steve Rogers' legacy." There was a lot of that kind of hysteria going on, but there is. We're not talking about a guy who decided he was going to be evil. We're talking about a guy who is ostensibly a good guy. You know, he's a great soldier. He's a three-time Medal of War, Medal of Honor winner. He served his country for years. You have in episode 2 where you have that quiet moment with Lamar in the locker room, which is a good kind of window into who John Walker is as a person. You know, he just wants to do the job. He doesn't want to let anyone down. But he gets given this role of Captain America, and it's an incredible responsibility that I don't think he realized was going to weigh as much as it did. And you get to see it slowly crush him over the next couple of episodes. You can see the cracks kind of appearing in his psyche. And Lamar was the kind of straw that broke the camel's back. And that's the point where we've got a John Walker at this point who is completely broken. He's not, you know, the lights are on, but there's no one home. There's no one behind the wheel. He's not in control of his behavior or his actions. He's not thinking rationally. So we're not talking about a guy who's an evil guy who decided to willingly do an evil thing. We're talking about a man breaking under incredible pressure. And that doesn't make what he did any less bad. You know, he murdered a guy. He wasn't acting in self-defense. He could have taken him in. Steve Rogers undoubtedly would have taken him in. But Walker wasn't in a position where he could have made a rational decision like that. So he's at the bottom of the hole at this point. And then, you know, for the next, and the physical tick you probably would have noticed he had, where you see a lot of this, and this is a sign of his mental illness. He's at conflict with himself. And the scene where after he murders a guy, he runs off to a warehouse, and you've got kind of like the flashbacks with Lamar, and this is, this is a guy who isn't in control anymore.
Do you think I was really like bothered by Lamar getting killed. I don't know. I really like him as well. It's not so much that, like, I say I like US Agent obviously, but it wasn't like, oh yeah, John Walker, and then everyone else is crap. I really like Battlestar. Firstly, I thought he looked cool. I love the two of them like teaming up and going to do stuff. Like, this was really cool. And even in the show, I was like, oh man, I want him to get a shield and, like, get somewhat close to that costume. And do you think, is he dead? I mean, it looks like they're presenting him as dead. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you think he's dead, or can he come back? Because I want him back.
I think he is dead. I mean, obviously, in comic books, no one ever really stays dead. We used to say that of Bucky until we brought him back. So death isn't sacred in the comic books, but in the MCU, it seems to be. They've killed off a few characters over the years. You think like Baron Strucker in, I think it was Civil War movie, and he's in it for like 5 minutes. And Strucker's a fairly big Captain America character, and he's a bit part. He gets killed off straight away, and we're never going to see him again. So I fear that Lamar is done for, and I'm like you. I really like Lamar, and we have a soft spot for Lamar on the US Agent page. Lamar is definitely on topic. We also have as well one of our board members, page members, is Gregory Wright, who wrote the Silver Sable title in the 1990s. Silver Sable and her Wild Pack, and Lamar was a big part of that team. And in fact, it's probably, if you want to read some Battlestar, it's probably the best title to pick up. That's probably where he gets the most exposure and the most attention and the most exploration. So yeah, we love Lamar on the US Agent page, and I was, number one, I was really shocked to see he died, because I didn't think he would. I think most people after episode 2 were thinking it was probably going to be John's wife who bought the farm. So yeah, when Lamar died, it really took me by surprise, and I was a little bit disappointed by it, because I thought there's a good character there who is worth exploring, and we're probably never going to see that.
Man, I was with you. I thought the wife was done for. Like, they're going to find out who she is, just like Carly when she was calling Sam's sister, and talking, like, making threats and all that. And I thought, this is what happened later, but I thought that, I thought like, oh, she would definitely. I thought, here's John Walker's wife, she's dead. Like, I thought 100% she's dead, for sure, and that's going to set him up.
And of course, it was John's family in the comics who ended up being exposed to risk. It wasn't Lamar who ended up getting killed in the comics. It was John's family that was targeted. And they were targeted specifically because John's identity was made public. And obviously in the show, he's public from the beginning. So I thought that might have played into it, which is why I was thinking it was his wife who was going to cop for it. But no, Lamar really took me by surprise. But I was disappointed, because Lamar was a cool guy. I've described him as Walker's Jiminy Cricket. He kind of sits, he's the voice of reason. He sits on Walker's shoulder, and he tries to steer him down the right path. And losing Lamar is a metaphor for John losing that kind of voice of reason. It's one of the reasons why he goes off the rails so bad. The thing I found most disappointing about it is that Lamar doesn't really get much character development himself. He kind of gets beaten up a couple of times, never really does anything, and then basically gets killed off just to give John Walker a reason to get angry, which isn't something I thought we'd see in the MCU. We see it in the comic books all the time. They call it fridging, where normally a woman, and it's a woman who exists purely for the reason of either being injured or killed. So then a male character has a reason to get all angry. And the MCU has avoided that, and I didn't think they'd go there, but for me they did.
For the most part, let's say 80% of all the MCU characters have been pretty good representations, if not literally exactly the comics, somewhat in spirit of what the character is in the comics. And Lamar was the first one. I mean, not the first one. There's lots that they didn't do like the comics, but I was really getting into this idea that Lamar and John, I actually was thinking they're going to do like the comics almost. They could have done Bucky and Sam doing their little side mission, Lamar and John doing their kind of mission, and then eventually they're going to, team up. So basically the Falcon and Winter Soldier TV show, and Sean said this, so I'm not taking credit for this. Sean's like, this is the Captain America TV series that doesn't have Captain America in it. It's pretty much, it's almost like his storylines, but just done with Sam, and incorporating obviously when Sam becomes Captain America in the comics as well. But Lamar dying really sucked, and that kind of, I don't want to say that took me out of the show, but I was almost like, oh, because I understood exactly what they were doing, like what you said. It's like, oh, here's where John's gonna go crazy now, and that's why is that the reason that they had him in here, and it sort of is that, I suppose. But I wish they could have handled it a better way and not sacrifice the character who I thought was cool.
Yeah. I think a lot was they were limited by the length of the show. 6 episodes obviously isn't a very long season. I think if they'd had more 10 or 12 episodes, they would have explored characters like Lamar a lot more, and perhaps giving him, a bit more development. And I think they would have looked at John Walker as Captain America in a bit more detail. Another thing I didn't like about the show is that basically John starts failing from the very beginning. He never really gets anything right. Whereas in the comic book story that it's based upon, John has his successes. John is he goes on a few missions, has some successes, locks up some bad guys. Doesn't always get it right. Does it in a different way to Steve Rogers. There's a couple of issues where we also get to explore John's characters and inner thoughts a little bit more. So literally the first thing John Walker does in the comics when he gets a job of Captain America is he sits down and starts watching old videos of Steve Rogers and says to himself, what would Captain America do? And that's something we never had in the TV show. He kind of goes in both feet first, gets everything wrong, fails at everything. The Flag Smashers get away in episode 2. Straight away, he's at loggerheads with Bucky and Sam. Lamar buys the farm, and then it's all downhill for John Walker. So it would have been nice to see, just have a little bit more in there to say this guy isn't all bad. He isn't a complete failure. He's not right. He's not the right person to be Captain America. He's not the right person to inherit the legacy of Captain America. But there is something about him that redeems him and makes him a worthwhile character. And I think that's possibly why he got a lot of the negative attention, because we've got a guy here. He doesn't do anything good. He doesn't succeed. He doesn't have any individual moments where we learn that he actually is a good guy and his heart is in the right place. We throw him in at the deep end and we watch him drown for 6 episodes, until the very end when he somewhat redeems himself.
Yeah, and I think for me, it's hard for me to, and this happens all the time when I watch any superhero thing. Actually, yeah, Tish is right. Yeah, like hopefully U.S. Agent, he does more as U.S. Agent. But when I'm watching these movies, whether it's like a Superman or a Batman or a Captain America, I can't turn it off. Like I know who the characters are, so it's hard for me to turn it off and think, okay, in the MCU, this is what John Walker is. It's hard to turn that off, right? And that's why we get into these spats with people, because people are like, well, John Walker's an asshole. I'm like, well, no, not really. What are you talking about? Well, they didn't really show this. And then you get into the nerdy debates where it's like, well, in the comics, it was more like this. And you felt really bad. Because when his parents get gunned down or whatever, I was just like, oh man, that's it. And then he literally dismantles the crap out of I was like, wow, this is the best. And you're almost like cheering him on. You're like, yeah, get those guys. It's I don't know if you're supposed to. It's not Steve Rogers. Like I can appreciate Superman, Steve Rogers, like these characters, because Superman's my favorite superhero. So I appreciate the good guy who helps, does the right thing. But I can also appreciate someone who, like the Punisher. And it's like, you know what? I'm just pissed off. I've had enough. And, and that was sort of his Punisher moment right there. And it was understandable, I thought. And I think people don't see that. They're just seeing, oh, John Walker, he's like this crazy guy and he's killed someone. It's like, I know, but it's deeper than that. And I think they kind of were trying to show that it's deeper than that. And Wyatt Russell, I think, played it very well too. But yeah, some people just want to see it and say like, well, he murdered someone who was, begging or who was down. And they're like, I mean, it's more complicated than that. I wanted to mention, did you read all of these? You read all of these, right?
I did, yeah. Where are we? We're up here somewhere.
Let's get into some modern U.S. Agent, because until this series, the last U.S. Agent series was the one with the blue. I'm bad with names and numbers. With the blue background where he's standing in the shadows. Was that it? That was the last U.S. Agent? Or was there one after that?
I mean, he's only had, even though he's been around for 35 years, but he's only had 3 series of his own. So the first one was 1988.
Yeah, that one.
Grunwald. That was Scourge of the Underworld. Now he had a later one in, I think it was 1998, with the kind of Judge Dredd style uniform. Now that came out of a story called Maximum Security. And Maximum Security was a story written by Kurt Busiek in the year 2000. And he basically had a story where the Earth becomes a prison planet. The rest of the galaxy is sending all of the criminals and refugees and monsters and basically any intergalactic problems to Earth. They're sick of Earth kind of sticking their nose into intergalactic business. So they think the best way to solve it is to basically keep them occupied by sending all of their problems there. So we have all these early aliens popping up on Earth, and Earth obviously needs a response. So who better to kind of marshal the Earth's superhuman response than John Walker, the US agent, who's kind of the government's premier superpowered agent. So they give him a new costume and a new attitude and a whole group of people and a load of tech, and put him in charge of the likes of the Avengers. So there's some really good scenes in there where kind of US agent walks into Avengers HQ with Captain America and the rest of the Avengers and basically says, well, I'm in charge now. And you've kind of got the look of incredulation on the Avengers. You've got to deal with this arsehole coming in, telling them what to do. And there's some really good character moments in there. I was actually fortunate enough to interview Kurt about this series on the US Agent page. One of the beauties of social media is that you get to meet your heroes a bit more. So I kind of just stalked Kurt around the internet for a little while and sent him a message saying, you know, I run this page. I love the character. I loved your story. Would you be willing to do an interview for me? Now, initially, Kurt said, oh, you know, I'm not feeling very well. I'm suffering with some ill health. And I thought, well, this will be the last that I hear from Kurt Busiek. And literally, probably the best part of the year went by, and all of a sudden I had a message pop up in my message box on Facebook, and it's Kurt, and he's saying, I'm feeling much better now. Can we do that interview? And you know, it was really, really nice. Number one, but obviously he was willing to accommodate me. But number two, that he remembered after all that time that, you know, I'd asked him to do the interview. So we did the interview. Kurt was a really, really good guy. I mean, he's one of my favorite writers anyhow. You know, he did the likes of Thunderbolts. He had a good run on Avengers. Iron Man, did Marvels, which is a really good story. He couldn't have been more accommodating. It gave me the opportunity as a fan to ask all the questions I'd always wanted to ask, because these are stories that are in the kind of somewhat kind of pre-social media age, where we didn't have websites drip feeding us information every day and giving us the inside tracks on every story that's hitting the shelves. You know, there's decades of stories where we never knew what the writers thought about them because we never had an opportunity to ask them. So, you know, I got to have a kind of fanboy moment with one of my favorite writers and ask him everything I wanted to know about this character and about this story and what he felt about US agents and how he'd use, would he do anything different? And it was really interesting. I loved doing it. And Kurt is an absolute gent. And I'm ever so grateful for him for taking the effort to basically accommodate a complete stranger who stalked him on the internet.
I talked a little bit about this kind of thing with Rick when we were talking Captain America last time, and you have this opportunity now with like the Twitters and Instagrams and all this kind of stuff where you can like talk to these people, and like I'm friends with some of the current comic book writers and stuff too, and it's not even like I'm following them. Like I'm actually friends with them on Facebook. Like I'll see their posts where they're like, "Oh, we're going out, you know, we're going out to rent a movie or something," you know. And it's crazy that like you can chat with these people. And JMD Mateus, I was messaging him, and he responds back to you on Facebook.
Yeah,
and
I mean, Kurt's not the only person. I also interviewed a gentleman by the name of Alan Jacobson. Now, Alan isn't predominantly known as a comic book writer. Most of his work has been in animation and television, and he's worked for the likes of Disney and Pixar. But in the early 2000s, Alan was a friend of Chuck Austin, and Chuck got him into Marvel Comics, and he wrote a series called New Invaders, which again starred John Walker, this time taking over once more as Captain America, a somewhat ersatz Captain America. And it's a series that only ran for 10 issues, very short, but one of my personal favorites. And one I wanted to learn more about, but one there wasn't a great deal of information about on the internet. So again, I did the old Facebook stalking thing. Now, The funny thing about it is because Alan isn't really known for his comic book work, you won't find a picture of Alan on the internet. You know, if you want to find out who John Romita Jr. is, you can type it into Google and find a picture, no problem. But try finding a picture of Alan Jacobson. I promise you won't find it. So the only picture I could find was actually a cartoon of him, which I think he might have drawn himself. So I basically went through Facebook looking at the profile pictures of every person called Alan Jacobson until I found a real person who kind of looked like this cartoon, and then sent him a message saying, "Listen, this is going to sound really weird. I promise you, I'm not a serial killer, but are you the Alan Jacobson who wrote New Invaders for Marvel Comics?" And sure enough, eventually he replied and said, "Yes, I am." So, again, I tapped him up for an interview. Brilliant guy. A degree of irony, in fact, because obviously we've raised the issue that I'm British, so it's perhaps a little bit unusual that US Agent would be my favorite character. Alan is an American, but his favorite character is Union Jack. So we kind of had that in common, but he was a great guy. He put loads of effort into the interview. I had loads of questions for him, and we managed to get the beauty of it. The thing I appreciate the most about it is that there's now a load of information out there, and anyone can read these interviews on the US Agent page, and I've shared them elsewhere. That information wouldn't have been available if it wasn't for social media, and for one fan stalking someone all over the internet. But that's the world we live in now, and I suppose that's one of the better things about social media is that you can have access to your heroes a lot easier than you would have had prior to the invention of it. But yeah, Alan, again, great guy. They say don't meet your heroes, but I've got to say, all the ones I've met so far have been terrific.
Yeah, I haven't had any problems with anybody that I've met either that I can think of. But back in the day, the only interaction you'd get was you would write a letter to Marvel, and you hope to hell they got published in a book or something. I had one letter published in Magnus Robot Fighter, when I think it was Jim Shooter doing it. Which is a weird character, but I happen to like him, and that was the only time I ever got anything published. I was like, "Oh my god!" It's like, but yeah, now it's
published in Rick Remender's Punisher run, where he had Frankencastle.
Okay.
And I wasn't a fan of it, so I wrote him a letter basically saying, I think the kind of some of it was, if you ask Punisher fans what they want from a Punisher title, I'm pretty sure they wouldn't say, "I want Frank Castle as a Frankenstein's monster fighting undead Nazis and techno samurai." And I thought, this is never going to get published in a month of Sundays. But sure enough, it got published. I mean, the reply was basically Rick saying, "Well, I think the title's great and it's doing really well," and it got cancelled 6 issues later. But yeah, at least he kind of took the criticism on the chin. And I had it didn't get published, but I wrote an email to Greg Rucka once. Punisher is probably my second favorite character. I wrote an email to Greg Rucka when they changed Frank Castle from a Vietnam veteran to a Gulf War veteran. It was something that didn't sit right with me because I kind of see Vietnam as being central to the character. I don't think Frank Castle would have turned into the person he was if it wasn't for Vietnam. So I just sent Greg Rucka an email, and Greg Rucka was kind enough to reply.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I love Punisher as well. I have like a big statue of him, and I have every single issue of War Journal, individual issues of Punisher War Journal, which was like my favorite. Yeah, Punisher's a great guy too. I like a lot of characters. It's like, but I mean, yeah, I've got the Punisher shirt as well. So
well, I mean, US Agent did cross paths with the Punisher in a story called No Escape. It was one of the Marvel. You probably remember in the 80s and the 90s, Marvel went for a trend of doing original graphic novels, and they released dozens of them. Yep. And these were graphic novels which hadn't previously appeared in individual comics. Punisher must have had about 20 or 30 of these things because he was a huge character in the 80s and the 90s. And Gregory Wright, who, as I said previously, is a member of the US Agent fan page, he wrote Punisher No Escape. So it's one of my favorite stories because it's got two, my favorite and my second favorite character meeting up, I think for the only time they ever have, in what is a genuinely good story. And Gregory is a really nice guy. He comments on the US Agent page, and he's really approachable. We had a little chat recently about Battlestar and his work on the Silver Sable title. And again, it was an opportunity to kind of get information out of a creator which hadn't previously been published, because that story was written in the 1990s, before social media, before effectively there was much of an internet. So we're learning a lot of things, or there's the opportunity to learn a lot of things for the first time, even on stories which have been around for decades. But yeah, if you've not read it, pick up No Escape. It's a great story.
And that's just a one-off. It's just one book, right? Yeah.
It's a one-off. It's a kind of standard comic book size. It's not one of the oversized graphic novels.
Right, right.
And the story is the Commission for Superhuman Activities, for some reason, decides that the Punisher is going to be a priority for them, and they basically say to US Agent, "We want you to go out and lock up the Punisher." So he goes out. They have a fight, as superheroes always do when they meet up for the first time, and then they team up to take down a bigger evil. And Punisher kind of escapes off into the night, and John Walker has to go back to the Commission and explain why he didn't follow orders. So there's some good John Walker moments in there. One of the things, and you might have seen a feature we've run on the page, John Walker always follows orders. This is a common misconception for people who do read the comics, that John Walker is this guy who slavishly always follows the orders of the government. He's known primarily as a government operative. So we're running a feature on the US Agent page, have been doing for a little while, of all of the times when John Walker didn't follow orders. It's called John Walker Always Follows Orders, apart from when he doesn't. And that pretty much starts early in the characters. As soon as he becomes Captain America, he basically starts breaking orders and doing what he wants rather than what he's told to do. And it's a bit of an injustice to the character to say that he's a guy who mindlessly follows orders. John Walker is a guy who, if he has an order and that order is clearly wrong or illegal, he won't follow it. And there's plenty of examples throughout the character's history of him doing that. Where I think the assumption comes from is that he has a blind spot towards authority. So a good example is the Captain America Sam Wilson series, where the government basically sick US agent on Sam Wilson, or rather Steve Rogers, evil Steve as he was, sicks John Walker and Sam Wilson to take the shield back, and they manipulate him into doing that. They give him half a story. They show a video of Sam Wilson fighting cops and basically convince John that this is Sam beating up cops, when the true story is that these were a kind of punitive police force who were beating up civilians for no good reason, and Sam Wilson was trying to stop them. So that's where John's weakness is. He's far too trusting of authority. He tends to take them at the word initially. However, when he has a full disclosure or the full facts of a situation laid out in front of him, he will do the right thing. People have said things like, "Oh, John Walker's racist." Well, Avengers Spotlight, sometime in the early 1990s, we have John Walker literally helping illegal immigrants cross the border from Mexico into America because it's the right thing to do. And he does question the legality of it. He admits, he's breaking the law in doing what he's doing, but he's got a bunch of people here who are being targeted and being murdered. And he kind of says it to himself, even questioning the legality of helping these people sounds pathetic when you say it out loud. And so he does it because it's the right thing to do. It's illegal, it's not his job, but it's the right thing to do to help people. And that's what John Walker's all about. He's got some notable weaknesses. He does have this blind spot towards authority, but he is ostensibly a good guy. And when the facts are laid out in front of him, he'll do the right thing.
Plus, yeah, I don't want to, that term is thrown around like for anything that anyone says, and John Walker's, like, to me, Lamar's his best friend. So, I mean, what are you talking about? I never like saying like weird comment. Like I grew up in a very, like, I don't want to get into this too much, but like I grew up in a very, very like diverse neighborhood. I had black friends. I had Filipino friends. I had Muslim friends. I'm still friends with a lot of these people right now. I actually had gay friends and white friends, and we're all. It was like a mixed community, but within each community, it was like, this was sort of like the black community. This was sort of we had like, I'm Croatian, so we had like a little Croatian pack. Then we had the Muslim community here, the Filipinos, but we all went to the same school. So we're all friends with each other. So making fun of each other, like, that was the thing we did, like we'd make fun of each other all the time. Right. And it's like, nobody ever thought anything of it. Now, if you say, if when we were kids, if you say some of the stuff that we were saying back then, we're lifelong friends and I'm going to your wedding and I'm in your wedding party, you know what I mean? Like, we'd make fun of each other all the time. And it's like, if you heard us talking then, you'd be like, oh, this entire batch of people is racist. It's like, well, we're all buddies. We're just, having fun or whatever. It wasn't, I don't know. Now it's like, if you say anything that's somewhat a little bit offside, it's like they pile, like they're trying to say was John Wyatt or John Walker. It's like, did they say he was racist in the show? I don't think anyone they were. I don't think they were implying
No,
that.
I don't think they did. I mean, there are a couple of occasions in the comic book where he has exhibited what you might call casual racism.
Yeah,
But again, that wasn't Mark Gruenwald's intention when he created the character. Now, obviously, Mark Gruenwald sadly passed away in 1995, I think it was. And I'm very much of the opinion if Mark was still around these days, he would have loved social media, and he probably would have set the record straight himself. Now, for the lack of Mark being here to explain his characters to the fans, we have to rely on the people who knew Mark. Gregory Wright knew Mark, worked with Mark. Mark was one of the editors at Marvel when Gregory was working at Marvel. And Gregory was using characters created by Mark Gruenwald. And I have it on good authority from Gregory that when Mark Gruenwald created the character of John Walker, he had no intention of John being a racist. No, John is a nationalist. John is very much an America First type person, and I don't use that in the Trumpian way. Right. And I think part of the problem is that we've come to equate nationalism and racism as being the same thing.
Right.
Now, don't get me wrong. Sometimes they are. There's no doubt that sometimes people, nationalism and racism are the same thing. But John Walker is an example of a man where they are very much different things. So as you said, I mean, John Walker's best friend is a black man. When they first meet, there's actually a really good scene where Lamar's sharing bunks. They've got like a bunk bed, and Lamar's going to sleep in the bunk under John. And he says, have you got a problem with a black man sharing the same bunk as you? And John's response is, you're an American, aren't you? And that's what matters to John.
Right.
John, he doesn't like Russians, for example. He doesn't like communists.
Right.
But no problem with Black Americans or Hispanic Americans or any other kind of American. And he's not the kind of person who would treat you differently purely because of how you look or what religion you follow. And literally, in 35 years and maybe 500 appearances, there's been 2 or 3 examples where you could look at it and think, oh, maybe that's a little bit racist. And probably a couple of those have come from the latest miniseries written by Christopher Prince.
Yeah, so we can talk. Well, we'll end off by talking about the most recent. This is the 5-issue series. It's complete now, so it was 1 to 5. This just dropped this week. Did you have a chance to? I
did, yeah. I got the whole thing. Picked up all the alternate variant covers as well. I don't normally do variants, but I couldn't resist these.
Yeah, I usually don't get variants as well, and I don't think I got any of the variants. Sometimes my shop, I have a standing pull list, and I always tell them I want cover A. So sometimes they accidentally give me a variant, but usually I just go back and exchange it for cover A. So what were your thoughts on this as a whole, I guess?
I mean, as a whole, I think it's a good series. There's some really good character moments in there. We learn a bit more about John Walker as a person. We find out, what John sees as his people. He's very much about the little guy, John Walker, even though he's got this reputation as being a bit of a government stooge. What he really cares about is the man on the shop floor, the kind of downtrodden individual. So he's basically working for this small community where their local businesses have been destroyed because of some government shenanigans, and he gets dragged in accidentally to investigate what's going on in this small town, and basically just ends up hanging around, playing games with the locals, eating their local cuisine and conversing with them. The story itself explains that John Walker is no longer officially US agent. He's been sacked by the US government. And again, it feeds into what I said earlier on about John Walker not being a guy who always follows orders. He gets sacked because he didn't follow orders. He was basically ordered to bust up a peaceful protest, said, this isn't the right thing, I'm not doing it, and ultimately ends up getting sacked after destroying a load of military equipment. So he's not US agent anymore, although he's wearing a variation of the US agent costume. It kind of looks like an army surplus US agent costume that he's cobbled together from whatever he can find. He's still using a shield, but it's not the vibranium shield. It's made out of something a little bit more fragile. He's got a whole load of them because he has to keep replacing them as they get damaged. And it introduces a new US agent who is effectively a corporate US agent. It's an individual who is serving a company. The rights for the US agent franchise, if you will, have been purchased from the government. We get to look at there's some relationship moments. John hasn't been, or he's not been known for really having any relationships in his life. There's been one or two, but we've never really been developed. And there was even a rumor circulating around the internet a few years back that John Walker might be gay, or he might be one of those characters that Marvel tried to express as gay, because he's never had a significant love in his life. We find out that John Walker's been having a relationship with Val Cooper, which people who read the comics will be aware Val Cooper has basically been his boss for forever since he became Captain America. So yes, it was a decent series. I did enjoy it. I didn't like, there were a couple of moments in the series where they basically have John acting in a casually racist manner. There's a character in the series called Mori, who is of Oriental descent, and John uses some mildly derogative language. I think he calls him Bruce Lee and refers to him as Charlie Chan. And there's been a couple of moments like that in the character's history, and that, I do think that is out of character. John isn't the kind of person to treat you differently because of the way you look. But overall, I mean, it's obviously great to see John on the page again. There haven't been that many John Walker comics over the years. He's only had a couple of series prior to that. And for me, it was probably a 7 out of 10.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a good rating. I enjoyed it. It was a fun read. When I first read the first, I'll be honest, when I read the first issue, I thought, ooh, this is no. and then I actually, so I hadn't got, because this wasn't on my pull list. I don't put miniseries on my pull list because, I don't know if I'm going to stick with them. And I actually asked the question on your Facebook group, and people were kind of like, yeah, it's pretty good. I thought, okay, you know what? Let me go back and just quickly get them. And by that time, it was on issue 3 or 4 or something. So I was able to get them all very quick, very easily at my shop. Really orders a lot of copies. So you're not, unless it's a super hot book, you can wait a month or two and go back and still get the last 3 or 4 months worth of books. So I was able to get all the proper covers for this series, and I gave it another shot and I reread it again. And I liked it a lot more in the second time through. But yeah, I know they inserted John, doing those little comments, and I'm like, really? Like, I this is weird. Why is that happening? Would John really, talk like that? I don't know. I guess Christopher Priest is thinking that he would talk like that. But yeah, my interpretation was that John, it just like you're saying, it's like he's all about the good old USA. And if you're an American citizen, then you're like, yeah, you can fist pump and we're together, And if you're not, then, maybe he may treat you differently or whatever. But I mean,
there's a really good scene. I showed you Maximum Security earlier on.
Mm-hmm.
There it is again. Have you ever read it?
Nope.
There's a really good scene at the end of Maximum Security, which is kind of one of the earliest indications of exactly who John Walker is. And they've beaten off the big evil. The day has been saved. And John Walker tears a strip off of the Avengers, basically goes to the Avengers. This is all your fault. You superheroes and your juvenile games constantly putting the earth at risk, getting people killed, getting cities destroyed. I'm about the little man. I'm about the guy on the street, and I'm here to make sure that law and order applies to everyone, including you. I mean, I'm paraphrasing there. It is a terrific little scene. You'll probably find it on the internet somewhere, or I could post it on the US Agent page for you. But that kind of encapsulates for me who John Walker is. Yeah, he's this roughy, tufty, arrogant, somewhat insufferable government agent, but at the heart of him, he's a decent guy, and he's got a strong moral backbone. And he really does care about the little people. It's not all about his own ego. It's not about the US government. It's about the US people. But whereas other heroes are international heroes, perhaps, and they're more interested in world affairs, John Walker does have that more narrow worldview where he's about prioritizing Americans before other nations. Again, it doesn't matter whether they're Black Americans or Hispanic Americans, straight Americans, gay Americans, males or females. So long as you're American, John's the guy who's going to have your back.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not even like upset over that. Like, some people just get upset over this stuff. When you're from the UK, I'm from Canada. I don't care. It seems more like people are getting upset. It's like, oh, he's a pro-America guy, but that's where he's from. He's a patriot.
Well, we've not spoken about Omega Flight, have we?
We haven't spoken about
about
which
Omega Flight.
Omega Flight.
Obviously,
Right.
John, and,
Yeah,
and again, it's a good indicator of where John's belief system is. John Walker was again, I've got it in here somewhere. Where are we? John was once ordered to go to Canada to work for Alpha Flight on their Omega Flight program. That was part of the Civil War storyline that happened a number of years back. And his response was, I work for Uncle Sam, not Major Maple Leaf. And he's dead set against going to Canada, and eventually he gets persuaded to do it. I mean, he again, it's a good example of John refusing to follow orders as well. He said he'd rather be court-martialed than go to Canada. I'm sure Canada is a very nice place, but John Walker didn't want to go there, and eventually they persuade him to go there because there's someone he wants to beat up north of the border. Didn't run for very long, but it's quite an interesting little series.
Yeah, and Sean commented on that early on. Or whatever. I mean, the idea that he's going to Canada, it's like I don't serve Major Maple Leaf.
Absolutely, yeah.
And you know what? Like, who cares? Like, this kind of thing doesn't bother me at all. I don't get offended by anything. It doesn't. Oh, hey, Beast. There you go. It's like, I mean, who cares? This is the character. Like, it doesn't matter to me what he's saying. It's like, look, he doesn't want to go because he's like, why are you sending me off to another country when I'm supposed to be doing good for this country? So what is that like? Why does that? And that was one of the points that they said was bad about him in that 10 reasons why John Walker is not good or something. They said, he doesn't
like Canada.
Like, okay, well, whatever. Like that, and I'm like, that doesn't bother me at all. And even if that was actually true in that sense, it's like, okay, so what? I mean, he's not Captain Canuck. We have Captain Canuck here, which, like, honestly, I don't think anyone reads.
Well, you do have Major Maple Leaf as well. He's an Alpha Flight character, isn't he?
I mean, I had collected Alpha Flight, Vindicator, and all that stuff. I mean, I collected Alpha Flight. It's okay. It was John Byrne, right? I think Alpha Flight was that John Byrne? I've got those issues somewhere.
It was in the, and then Simon Thurman later on.
It took over, yeah. So, I mean, I just couldn't get into them. I don't know why. I know I couldn't get into them as much. Like no, okay, but like it's like, yeah, it doesn't affect me, right? This is the character. If you're into the character, you're into the character. If you're not into the character, you're not into them. But I mean,
and this is the appeal of John Walker. I mean, I like Steve Rogers because Steve Rogers is a paragon. Steve Rogers is the guy we all want to be. In an ideal world, we'd all be like Steve Rogers. But Steve Rogers has attained a level which very few people in real life attain. John Walker is relatable because John Walker is a difficult person. John Walker's arrogant. He can be insufferable. He's got an attitude. He can be aggressive. At the heart, but at the same time, he's got a great deal of deep-seated insecurity. But underneath it all, he's a good guy. And I'm very much of the opinion that most of us are a lot closer to John Walker than we are to Steve Rogers. We've got probably the best way I can sum it up. If you think of your 7 deadly sins, how many of them does Steve Rogers suffer from? Pretty much none of them. Now, we all do, greed, gluttony, envy. The human attributes, we all get them from time to time. John Walker gets them. So we're all, we are John Walker. We're a lot closer to a John Walker than we are to a Steve Rogers. And I like to see characters struggling. I like to see characters who are either past the best or maybe were never that good to begin with. I mean, other characters like the likes of, I like Moon Knight and I like Nick Fury. I like the Punisher. Characters with those shades of grey and those nuances. I mean, one of my favorite stories outside of US Agent stories is the Charlie Huston run on Moon Knight. I don't know if you've read that.
I obviously know who Moon Knight is, and I'm bad with names, so I'm not sure if I've read that one. I had some of the earlier Moon Knight stuff.
Basically, Charlie wrote a story called The Bottom, and it was about a Moon Knight who's basically he is at the bottom. He's addicted to drugs. He's an alcoholic. He's scared away everyone who ever cared for him. He's lost every penny he ever earned. His knees are all busted up. He's having to pop painkillers all the time. And it's about a guy who's past his best and he's questioning whether he was ever good enough to be a hero in the first place. And it's a great story because it's relatable, because it's about a guy who's struggling every day with everyday challenges and has to drag himself out of a deep, dark hole he's in. John Walker's a character like that. He's imperfect. He's never going to be perfect, but he's trying to be. He's trying to be better than what he is, and that makes him very relatable and very human to me. And you know what? I can be insufferable at times. I can be a difficult person to get on with. I see a lot of myself in John Walker, and I think we probably all have John Walker moments where, you know, especially on the internet, where perhaps we go in a bit too two-footed, or we don't think before we open our mouths, or we have a knee-jerk reaction to something. These are all reasons why I love John Walker, because he reminds me of me, and he reminds me of so many other people. And I think if we were all honest, you know, we probably are a bit closer to John Walker than we are Steve Rogers.
You know, and you know what? I think we've been going for an hour and 40 minutes. It seems like it's been like half an hour. So this is a perfect closure to what you just said, but we are closer to John Walker than we are to Steve Rogers. All right. So this has been really awesome. I've got the links to the Facebook group for US Agent in the description of this video. And if you guys are interested in anything John Walker related, definitely join the Facebook group, but also, because John Walker now is becoming bigger in the MCU, that's going to bring more popularity. And you guys want to get in right away, because if you have any questions or if you want to know more, it's easy to go to Wikipedia, but you don't get the passion from Wikipedia. If you come to a group where everyone's talking about, you know, a character that you like or you're interested in, you're going to learn a lot more. Like, I've learned some things. You know, you pass by people's posts and you're like, oh, they made, you know, there's this. Like, I didn't even know there was a figure until you just showed me just now, like literally just now. So it's like stuff like that. And I didn't even know the ForceWorks thing was from that Iron Man. Like, I have the Iron Man cartoon, and I didn't realize that. So you learn a lot more if you're part of a community. So I urge everyone to check out the Facebook group. I think we're going to wrap it up there. Do you have any final words, Dave? Or are you cool with?
Just to say, it's been an absolute pleasure to be here, Jay. I've really enjoyed it. Doing these kind of conference calls is a new thing for me. I'm a bit of a Luddite. I'm very much an analog man in a digital world, and I've done a few of these in the last few weeks. It's been a real education for me. Normally I struggle on a telephone, so doing things live on the internet is another first for me. But you've been great. I love the show. I've watched a couple of your episodes once I learned that it existed. I'm really honored that you've invited me on as a guest. I mean, I could do this for another hour and a half if you let me. You know, hopefully we've got some new John Walker fans who are seeing the character in a new light. And if there's ever anything you want to know about the guy, you'd be more than welcome on the Facebook page, which is US Agent, part cop, part soldier, all hero. Come on over. It's a great place to be.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Dave. I really had a lot of fun with this one. I didn't think I'd be doing a US Agent thing ever. And so,
neither did I.
For better or worse, thank you to the MCU, I guess, for getting him in there. So that's really good. All right. So, Dave, thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to put you backstage and just close out. All right.
Thanks a lot, Jay.
All right. Take care. Okay, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this week's Amazing Fans segment. If you guys want to be on the Amazing Fans, drop me a line, comment on any video you want. You can hit me up on Twitter. I'm at Lifetime Nerd, or you can just hit me up on YouTube and let me know what character you want to talk about. As you can see, I'm a pretty big nerd. I don't know everything about every character, but we can at least chat about it. And I like connecting with people who are passionate about the characters that they love. So it doesn't have to be Marvel or DC. It could be like a pulp character, like a Doc Savage or a Spider or Green Hornet or something. It could be like a movie character. It could be like James Bond, perhaps, right? Even maybe if you like the Terminator or something, Snake Plissken, right? Any of these kinds of characters, drop me a line and we can discuss it on here. Okay, guys, I'm going to be back in the Danger Room tomorrow night, so 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and we're gonna tackle Invincible and anything else Marvel DC related. There's going to be fights, as there's always fights. We know that. So come in with your boxing gloves on. We're gonna talk about all the stuff that we always talk about. All right, guys, thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.